But I'm more specific, as I said later. On Monday, we are watching The Cranes Are Flying. This is a Russian, or I should perhaps say Soviet film, because it was made in the Stalinist, sorry, Russian was the Stalinist, but in the Soviet era. But you'll be surprised how good this film is, how devoid of propagandist messages, images, this film. It's a word drama, but very atypical, and certainly this is the film that should be seen. It has memorable scenes, great cinematography, acting, quite spectacular. And if I say so about the Russian film, this means that it's a good film. Why? Because when I was a student or a high school attendant student, Polish screens were flooded with Russian screens. This was a regular diet. We even had the week of Russian films. So no classes, but we went to movie theaters to see Russian films. Some of them terrible, others okay and good, but nobody complained, of course, because there were no classes, no math, physics, whatever. So Russian films. So, but this is one of the exceptional films. Okay? And I hope that you'll see that these exceptional moments in this work. Let me check once again. Jake Dobson. You see that we perhaps not the class. Okay. Ingmar Bergman. Bergman behind the camera with Sven Nykvist. Both great names. Both work in Scandinavia, in other European countries. Sven Nykvist also worked in Hollywood on several films. Today, we'll look at Bergman's biography. We'll focus in particular on White's shoulders, and we'll be listening to his comments. When he was in his 80s, he stopped making films. He was still working on screenplays. He was living on a small island called Faro. He was the only inhabitant of that island. He was writing, communicating with others, and he was visited by his fellow filmmaker, younger filmmaker, who directed this full-length interview with him. And I want you to listen just a couple of comments about his childhood, what influenced his filmmaking. And this is a very important filmmaker in the context of European cinema. His name is synonymous not only with Scandinavian cinema for some, but also synonymous with art cinema, European art cinema. When I say European art cinema, names such as Ingmar Bergman immediately come to mind. So let's start with general comments about his importance. I would like to quote others, just to give you an idea how this filmmaker was received in America. Let me quote, believe it or not, Woody Allen. Woody Allen, the maker of comedies, was fascinated by Ingmar Bergman, by this kind of cinema. Woody Allen even directed two films, serious films, Interiors, I think, and I forgot another title, that basically follow Ingmar Bergman's strategy. No comedies, no Woody Allen's gigs, nothing, just seriousness, important issues, etc., etc. I have to tell you also that both films directed by Woody Allen in the spirit of Ingmar Bergman failed at the box office. Nobody wanted to watch the serious side of Woody Allen. Yes? He's not known for this type of cinema. Are you familiar with Woody Allen? Yes? He's making films every year on a regular basis. More or less like Ingmar Bergman. Ingmar Bergman, when he directed his first film in the mid-50s, he was making films every summer. Every summer is important because it's Scandinavia, it's like the UP. It's difficult to make films in the winter unless you are making mountain films, skiing films, etc., etc. He was not interested in that type of story. So in the winter he worked always in Stockholm, other Scandinavian cities, in theater. So that's what Woody Allen writes. Only in the late 50s, when I took my dead wife, interesting comment, to see a match talk about movie with the unpromising title Wild Strawberries. Unpromising title. Yes, it's not a box office hit title, yes. Wild Strawberries. Would you go to a movie? Okay, let's go and see Wild Strawberries. Okay. Sounds like a film, I don't know, Julia Child starring or her biography, yes, just a cooking show. So when with an unpromising title Wild Strawberries, did I lock into what was to become a lifelong addiction to the views of Ingmar Bergman? I still recall my mouth dry and my heart pounding away from the first uncanny dream sequence. We'll see this sequence later. To the last serene close-up. Who can forget such images? The clock with no hands, the horse-drawn hearse suddenly becoming stark, the blinding sunlight, and the face of the old man as he is being pulled into the coffin by his own dead body. Clearly, he was a master with an inspired personal style, an artist of deep concern and intellect, whose films would prove equal to great European literature. He captures the essence of Bergman. That was the revelation. All of a sudden, serious films, serious literature, scripts that you can read like Dostoevsky, Goethe, and other great writers. And then Woody Allen adds, in addition to all else, and perhaps most important, Bergman is a great entertainer, a storyteller who never loses sight of the fact that no matter what ideas he's chosen to communicate, films are for exciting an audience. His theatricality is inspired. He talks about perhaps slightly old-fashioned Gothic lighting, those dark images sometimes, the way he portrays sky, trees, perhaps you've noticed. The flamboyant surrealism of the dreams and symbols. There are books on Ingmar Bergman titled simply Films and Dreams, the cinema of Ingmar Bergman. Yes, because that's what he deals with in his book, and he talks about breathtaking images, etc., etc. Others also comment in a similar manner. David Mamet, a playwright, director, mentions that he went in Chicago he attended the all-day Ingmar Bergman Festival. I went at 10 o'clock in the morning and stayed all day. When I left the theater, it was still light, but my soul was dark. And I didn't sleep for years afterwards. I have to tell you that the film I've chosen is one of the lightest. He deals with really serious issues, really troubling issues in several of his films. What about the man? Very versatile character, Ingmar Bergman. Not only a film director, but also a theater director, playwright, writer. He never, by the way, starred or appeared in his films or in his theater productions. The case of Woody Allen, for example, who's on both sides of the camera. Critics sometimes, when write about him, they stress his isolated position within Scandinavian cinema. They emphasize that he is very much different than an average Swedish or Scandinavian filmmaker. When I say Scandinavian, I refer to Norwegian, Finnish, and Danish cinemas as well. But for some critics, for me, for example, when I was a student, Bergman was the Swedish film. He was the essence of Swedish cinema. Obviously, this is not the whole truth. There were great filmmakers during the silent era in Scandinavia. Great actresses, Asta Nielsen, for example. The biggest studio around 1910 was there in the world, was not Hollywood, not the German studio, but this was the Spanish studio. around 1910, the most influential cinema. Some filmmakers from Scandinavia moved to Hollywood. For example, the filmmaker who stars in Wild Strawberries, Victor Siester. I'll give you the name in a moment. Let's see this name. Victor Siester, remember this, the first name, because he's the one who stars in Wild Strawberries. But also in the 50s, in the 60s, very popular films, more mainstream films, more entertaining films, combining, say, classical music with conventional narratives. Films such as Adalan 31 or Elvira Madigan, directed by filmmaker Bo Wiedenberg. And I would like to recommend those films. Why they were so special? First of all, great cinematography, great stories. Elvira Madigan, this is a romance story, love story, very sensual, frank too. I mean, the depiction of sexuality, relationships, this was still something new during the period. Look at American cinema. Film noir directors struggle with the portrayal of, sexuality on screen. They had to use veiled symbols, messages, in order to communicate to audiences what they really wanted to show. So films made in Sweden at that time were very frank, matter of fact. Some, you may say, even bordered on soft, erotic films. And some caused scandals all over the world. For example, if you go to Netflix, you know that Netflix doesn't have films that are too risky, but Netflix has two films directed by Gilbert Sjomer, the first name, I Am Furious Yellow, I Am Furious Blue. Art films, personal films, full of nudity, you may call it even soft porn for today's standards. These were films made in the 60s, beginning of the 70s. He sent them to different festivals. They were rejected by a number of festivals. This was just too much. When I'm talking about the 50s, the canon, apart from noir films for dedicated viewers, was very much different. This is the era of big screen films such as The Sound of Music, 1955. This type of cinema. This was mainstream. Anything else was somewhere on the margins. And then you have European art films, shown usually in small theaters, art houses. These were cinema theaters built in order to accommodate those unwanted films, risky films, or films for cinebugs only. So Bergman's cinema certainly belonged to that category. About him, and there will be some images from his life in that documentary. The theater is like a loyal wife, he writes. Film is the big adventure, the expensive and demanding mistress. You worship both, each in its own way. That's what Bergman writes in 1955. He was born, let me repeat, in Sweden. His father was a Lutheran pastor. It's important because references to religion, discussions about religion, reappear in so many films, even in Wild Strawberries. It's not in the center, but it's present there. His father was a Lutheran pastor. The whole country is Lutheran, Sweden, and this was very strict upbringing. Images of strict, demanding, punishing father also reappear in several films by Bergman. Bergman claims, I'm a tough man, like other people from my province. I'm a mountaineer, which is even fixed in my name. Bergman. This means man from the Berg, from the hill. In his memoirs, he always emphasizes that the theater, this was his first passion, that he was fascinated by theater, that he created a puppet theater when he was a child. He was writing his first plays when he was a teenager. He admired classical playwrights, including Strindberg. Perhaps the name sounds familiar if you study theater. 19th century psychological middle-class dramas, very popular plays to this day. So this was Ingmar Bergman's world. He became a professional theater director at the beginning of the 40s, and then in 1944 he produced his first script, film script. Torment is the title. Very appropriate for Bergman. It's not entertaining at all if you have a film called Torment. It was directed by an established filmmaker. Bergman continued to write screenplays for others, and in his scripts he concentrated on basic human problems, basically problems that you may find in classical theater success. When he started making films, he always worked with the same group of actors. They reappear in a number of his films. Let's look at these actors. He continued working with them in a number of films. Try to remember Max von Sydow, okay? He's a great actor. You've seen him only in an episodic role. Remember the man at the gas station? The man at the gas station who remembers the old doctor, is very fond of him. This is Max von Sydow. He also played in a number of American films. How about The Exorcist? He's one of the priests. Bless you. So remember this name, Max von Sydow. He's actually appearing in films to this day, by the way. Harry Anderson, Bibi Anderson, Ingrid Turin. Ingrid Turin is the blonde beauty in Wild Strawberries. Ingmar Bergman also works with the same cinematographers. This was Gunnar Fischer in his early films, and then for the rest of his career, and you please remember his name, Sven Nykvist. When you look at Bergman's films, you'll notice that he absorbed impulses from all cinematic sources. You may find the influence of dark German expressionist cinema, they call it also noir cinema, the dark photography, the use of shadows, the way he portrays sky, forest, nature, and also in some of his films the impact of the Soviet school of editing, fast montage, the way he cuts. For example, the way the dream sequence is done in Wild Strawberries, the opening sequence. Let's have a look at some of his films. Just to give you an idea, this is only a selection, and I would like to recommend in particular his films that I marked with an asterisk. You'll see a clip from Summer with Monica. Why? Because this will give you an idea about Bergman's early films, the way he dealt with relationships, what was so fresh and new about his cinema. So this will be a clip from this film. Then the seventh still. This is the film that is as famous, perhaps even more famous than Wild Strawberries. It's a medieval story. Highly recommend it if you like Wild Strawberries, just like the old film. A medieval knight from Scandinavia, he returns from the Holy Land from a crusade. The plague decimated his country. He lands, and this is the first image, and who awaits him? The figure of death. This could be on the Bergman cinema, yes? The figure of death, dressed in black, etc., etc. And the figure of black wants to grab him, finish his life. But he postpones the decision by offering a play of chess game with the figure of death. And this is a stunning image. Just take a look at this. Oops. This is the Max von Sydow as Antonius clock that he will mark, and the figure of death on the left playing the chess game, behind them the Baltic Sea. Very expressionistic, dark, full of symbolism, the opening of this film. And then scenes like the dance of death, the circus people. This was Ingmar Bergman's fascination as well. Now it's very dated, unless you, of course, think of Cirque du Soleil, the Canadian circus. But this was one of the established art at the time. So please remember this title. Also, another image that I would like to highly recommend: The Virgin Spring. The Virgin Spring is a medieval tale. Perhaps at this stage it's not very encouraging, but it is a tale about crime and revenge. The tale that is fascinating, suspenseful, well made with Max von Sydow and others. This is the film that was remade as a horror film. In recent years, perhaps you've seen this horror film. I think the title is The Last House on the Left. Have you seen it? This is the source. This is Ingmar Bergman. We have at least one copy or two copies in the library. Highly recommended. It's a great film, The Virgin Spring. Ingmar Bergman, as I said earlier, was making films on a regular basis every year. I listed only some. Some are difficult, discussed by scholars. Persona is usually analyzed by those who like psychoanalysis. It's very complex, etc., etc. He started to make films in color in the late 60s. Perhaps his best film in color is Cries and Whispers, a family drama, and a different phase of Ingmar Bergman, Fanny and Alexander, a slightly biographical film about his childhood, a family drama. We have also this film in our library. Do you have any questions at this stage? No? Okay, let us see a clip from The Summer with Monica, or sometimes this is the film known as Monica. This is the cover. The cover, the VHS edition. The story is, you may say, unsophisticated. You have two young people, high-spirited, full of energy, young woman, Harriet Anderson plays her, and a young man who was a dedicated student, who was very focused, etc. Two different characters. They decide to escape from the city and to live on a small island during the summer. And this will be just one fragment to show you how different images Bergman created in his early films. And compare these images with, for example, The Sound of Music. How many of you have seen The Sound